psychology major, what do you need to complete? General psychology, the first course in the major. Everybody should complete that first. Then the next course you should take as soon as you can, which it's offered fall semester, is the professional development and careers in psychology course. This is very good for those of us that want to find employment. Um, the next, the other courses in the foundational section are Intro to Brain and Behavior in the Lab, which if you were good at bio and chem type courses, you can take this whenever. If you're a little scared of these courses, I'd wait till junior and senior year when you've developed better study taking habits. Research methods and behavioral stats is where you learn how to do research in the field. Now, if you want to get a PhD in psychology, I would take this early, as early as you can. If you are a junior going into junior semester, take this your first semester. If you haven't taken it your first semester, take it your second semester. You should have this completed or started at least. Definitely, you want it completed by your junior year, at least started by your junior year. You will need this for any PhD program, and in order to get into a PhD program, you need to do research now. So get this course out of the way and start doing research with faculty and research internships. Anybody who wants a PhD, this is important. Now we have different buckets at our upper division of requirements. Our first bucket is the developmental science bucket. You take both courses, you do a community-based learning project. It is a good sequence to get started with because you learn a lot of good foundational principles of reading and research, and this is where we learn about kids and adults. But a lot of folks are interested in kids. This is the section that's going to focus on children, and adolescents and adults. It's the whole thing, but has a specific focus on children. Group B is cognitive and behavioral science. This is learning and memory and cognitive psychology. Learning and memory is like reward structures. How do we learn facts? How do we remember them? All those systems. Cognitive psychology is a deeper view of all of our mental processes. General, both are good. Both are good, and it's really going to be your choice. I feel, I have a lot of students that are interested in therapy. Both are going to be good because therapy uses a lot of reward structures and also examines the internal mind. So it's really going to be sort of your focus that determines this. If you're going to maybe work with just one-on-one clients that are adults, I would probably think cognitive psychology. But if you're going to work with people who are inpatient or in systems, learning and memory would be my suggestion because of learning how to set up token economies and systems of tokens and learning and reward. If you want to be a teacher, learning and memory for certain. Well, actually not, maybe both if you want to be a teacher. It's really your choice, but that's the main difference there. Group C is biological basis of psychological science. This is your more bio-focused stuff. Behavioral genetics, how genes and environment impact behavior, feelings, thoughts, all of the psychology. Really cool stuff. Sensation and perception, the foundations of consciousness and experience. So it's very neuro-heavy, like how does your eye create vision? Things like that. Neurological disorders are biological based disorders. Definitely interesting. The NS prefix tells you that you need to have a pretty solid science basis. Neuropharmacology, drugs in the mind, very interesting. Again, solid. Do not go into this without a solid science foundation. Neuroanatomy, neurophys, the structures of the brain and how they create electricity. Again, very very important that you have a strong science background and you study well for science tests. Anything with an NS prefix, you want to develop good science study habits. Person and society science, this is an area that's near and dear to me. I teach in this area. Social psychology is how society impacts our behavior, everything from peer pressure to culture. Psychology of racism is specifically our histories with racial oppression and how they show up today in systems behavior, individual behavior, and all of that. It's really a focus on how to dismantle racism, but also understanding how systems of racism develop. Psychology of gender is very similar to racism, but gender and gender systems. Cultural psychology is a is a focus beyond racism, but it focuses on how our cultural experiences shape our very mind. Psychology of personality is personality science. Personality and social are like the foundational blocks of person and society science, where you learn about the big five personality traits, individual differences, and those sort of things. I have no real recommendations there. If I were going to be a therapist, any of these are going to be good. They're going to teach you more cultural competence and those sorts of things. Um, but yeah, the choice is yours. Applied psychological science, this is going to be the one that are some of the most interesting. Ed psych, if you want to be a teacher, how do we learn? Industrial organizational psych, you want to work in business, how do you do that? Health psych, not taught by a member of the department, but it's how our mind impacts our health. Very good for folks that want to be OTs or PTs and that sort of stuff. Community psych, taught by Dr. Shrikin. It's sort of the perspective of community psychologists. They broke off from clinical psychologists, and they have different ways to treat communities, not individuals. Very good class. Clinical and counseling psychology is the application of treatments for psychological disorders. All right. Um, I'll give a recommendation in a second. Human sexuality is exactly what it sounds like. Human sexuality, very interesting course as well. Developmental disabilities, right? All the developmental disabilities, a great foundation of that. If you want to, work with folks with developmental disabilities, this is going to be your go-to class. Psychological disorders is what some places call abnormal psychology. So if you're looking to get a clinical psych degree or go on to a master's in therapy, they're going to expect that you have this course and maybe additionally clinical and counseling psychology. Keep that in mind. Forensic psychology is psychology of criminal behavior and other things related to that, the whole thing. And then clinical neuropsychology has not been taught in a while, but that would be more of a biological basis of clinical psychology. So you can see here, these are going to be the classes that you want. You're going to have to choose. If you want to go to the therapy route, I definitely recommend psychological disorders and clinical and counseling. Community psych is good for that as well. Developmental disabilities is good. Let's say if you want to work with individuals with developmental disabilities, definitely recommend that. Forensic psychology if you want to work in the prisons, things like that. Professional development. So research in psychology, if you do research with a professor for 3 credits, that counts. Independent capstone thesis, that is the last option. We do not want to teach this course. It will be a drag. So you want to get an internship in psychology or a research in psychology, depending on your path. Internship in psychology, if you actually want to work in the field with people in therapy, internship in psychology. If you want to get a PhD in any field, that's not clinical, research in psychology. If you want to get an internship, if you want to work in the field as a clinical psychologist, do both. We'll get to something in a second. Laboratory science, you have to take 2 of these labs. Social psych, cognitive psych, developmental psych, clinical neuropsych, neuroanatomy and physiology. Those are, actually not the last 2, because we haven't offered this in a very long time. In this one, it's not true. But the most common labs are social, cognitive, developmental, sensation, and perception. These can all be taken a semester you don't take the class. It's recommended that you take it the semester you take the class, but let's say you find yourself in a bind and you're like, oh, I need another lab. You can take any of these labs, not at the same time that you're taking the class itself. Sensation perception, if you take that class, you have to take that lab. All right? You got to take 2 of these labs. You also have one course that you need. Also, with the reduced core, you will have lots of options to take additional psychology courses, okay? I'm teaching you how to finish and graduate, but you can take extra elective psychology courses, and I definitely recommend that for my clinically minded students. We'll talk more about that as I get to the general core. There is an honors in psychology major program. What this requires is a research project, a senior thesis. You need a high GPA. You need to select a thesis committee. You need to obtain approval for your project. You need to write a grant proposal. You need to complete the proposed. You need to do research in psychology. Um, you need to complete the senior thesis, and you can see 2 credits of each. And you need to you complete the thesis. You can see what you need here: oral defense, presenting in a public forum, submitting your final thesis. Those are our requirements there. So that's the entire major. That's what you need to know. This is optional. I would recommend honors in psychology major for anyone, for those who need extra motivation, for anyone who wants to get a PhD in psychology. The real thing here is you need to get research presentations and publications. It is very difficult to get a PhD in psychology. For an example, I applied 20 years ago and I had 2 publications under my belt. So keep that in mind, right? You want to shoot for research presentations and publications. Presentations are posters presented at conferences. Publications are papers with your name on it. There are a lot of active labs around the department. Go talk to us. Go figure out who it is. So that is the major. You want to be a therapist, take a lot of classes, do community work, get internships. You want to be a PhD, right? You want to do research, get it published, right? Those are 2 paths. There are other paths as well. There is an OT path. There's PT. There's all these other things. I'll get to that in another video, but this is the major.